Hey YouTubers, this is the GSTV reviewer coming at you with another video for you guys today. So this is going to be another edition in my GSTV podcast series, and in this video I'm going to be addressing two particular subjects that I want to address, and these particular subjects involving the announcement of Jeffrey Dean Morgan's return to Supernatural, as well as my thoughts regarding about the three-night Arrowverse crossover event with Elseworlds. I also want to kind of start off this video by discussing about my thoughts concerning about the announcement of Jeffrey Dean Morgan's return to Supernatural. Its 300th episode is coming around the corner, and we're also hearing some announcement of some returning characters that will be on that as well. And this particular actor that I've mentioned, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, for those that are likely familiar with him, you might recognize him in many television shows and movies, and he's definitely a high-profile actor in Hollywood. Being in Grey's Anatomy in the earlier seasons of that show, he was also on Weeds, and even in recent years, people associate him with his role on The Walking Dead, one of the most controversial antagonists of the series run, and as well as in the Batman vs. Superman film from 2016. And overall, I gotta say, I'm very glad and excited to hear the announcement, and very interesting to see how they will bring back John, especially since Dean and Sam have been hunting for as long as they've been hunting. So a lot has changed since the show first started, and Dean and Sam have moved on since the passing of their father, and even in recent seasons, we got to see the return of the Mary Winchester character, particularly the mother, the particular actress Samantha Smith, who played the mother, who was unfortunately burned alive on the ceiling at the pilot episode of the series, and now they had her revived and having her as kind of like a regular character now. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how she and John and how they would interact, especially now that both of them are gonna cross paths in some way. So I'm not sure if they're gonna have by bringing back Jeffrey Dean Morgan to Supernatural once again, I'm not sure if they want to bring him back in a similar fashion like they did with Samantha Smith's version of Mary. Like, how are they going to pull this off? Like I said, it's been a long time since Jeffrey Dean Morgan's been on Supernatural. I mean, he was a recurring character throughout the first season, and he appeared briefly in season 2. He eventually got killed off in the first episode of the season when he made a deal with Azazel, the yellow-eyed demon, and basically letting Dean live after suffering through that car accident at the very end of the first season. And there was also a little cameo that he made at the season 2 finale, which was All Hell Breaks Loose, basically helping out Dean, Sam, and Bobby and Ellen. So basically, there was a fight scene that was going on between those four and Azazel, who was planning on releasing the demons. Other than that little cameo that he had in that 2-part episode, Jeffrey Dean Morgan hasn't even appeared on the show ever since. I know season 3 he did have that little phone call towards the end of the 3rd season, just right before Dean gets sent to hell, but that was more of a voiceover and not like an actual on-screen appearance. But ever since then, we haven't really seen the Jeffrey Dean Morgan version of John. I mean, we also have like a younger version of John showing up over the years, portrayed by Matthew Cohen. Great to see JDM back on the show, even if it's going to be kind of like a one-off episode. I don't know realistically if he would be willing to come back for a recurring role at best, or maybe like a regular appearance like what they've been doing with Mary in recent seasons. It'll be interesting to see how they'll play out Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character, and whether they'll get that kind of like this big payoff family get-together moment that we've never seemed to have. I mean, I know like in the pilot episode we all saw the younger versions of Dean and Sam in the moments where their mother was killed, but we never really actually got to see an on-screen appearance of all four of those actors together. Other not counting some of the behind-the-scenes panels that they normally do. It'll definitely be great, but especially it'll be definitely a tearful moment just to see all those four actors as far as how they'll play out their role. You know, having Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Samantha Smith, Jensen Ackles, Jared Padalecki all together. Now, I'm not sure if they could get Adrian Palicki on there because I haven't heard any announcements about that, but she's also another high-profile actor that was on Supernatural in the very beginning, and then she got killed off. And aside from a couple of small appearances that she had, we haven't really seen her ever since, other than a couple of archival footages. And I know she's also pretty busy, much like Jeffrey Dean Morgan has been. And they were even in a movie together, a remake of Red Dawn? I'm pretty sure that was the name of it. Like, hopefully I'm not wrong about that one. But they were in a movie. That's one thing that I know for a fact, that they actually were in something together. I know she was on Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for a little bit, and then she had to leave in order to do a spin-off show that never materialized, as well as many other pilot episodes of certain TV shows where she's the lead. A lot of the times they just never seem to come into fruition. And now she's on the Orville, which seems to go into its second season. So I'm not sure if they were able to get her on the show, or if they even considered to bring her back, even if it's just, you know, like I said, a one-off episode, or maybe just like a cameo at best. I'm definitely really glad to hear the announcement of Jeffrey Dean Morgan's return. And it's not very often that Supernatural tends to cast like some high-profile actors. Also, another thing, I mean, what would the confrontation between John and Bobby be like? You know, because I know Bobby had been a recurring character in the earlier seasons, and he'd been on there the longest besides Dean and Sam until getting killed off in season 7, getting sent to purgatory, and then now that Castiel has surpassed him as the longest recurring character on the show. That would be cool just to see, you know, Bobby and John maybe cross paths, because we never really got to see them on the same screen, even despite the fact that both Bobby and John have worked with each other in the years before the beginning of Supernatural started. I know they brought Bobby in over the years, so maybe, you know, they could have got Jim Beaver and Jeffrey Dean Morgan together. So that, I think that would be a great moment. And also, speaking of Castiel, I mean, how would John react now that they got an angel to be the brother's best friend, you know, Dean and Sam's friend? But, you know, as far as how John and Castiel, as far as how their conversation's going to play out, I mean, there's just a lot of potential possibilities with Jeffrey Dean Morgan appearing, even if it's just for this one particular episode. And I'm definitely really excited just to see how they will bring him back, and whether they'll bring him back similar to how they brought back Mary a few seasons back. But we'll just have to wait and see. And I'm definitely looking forward to that. So that's basically really my brief thoughts on the announcement behind Jeffrey Dean Morgan's return to Supernatural. And now moving on to my next topic. And this is going to be my thoughts concerning about the 3-night crossover event with Arrow, Flash, and Supergirl with the 3-part Elseworlds miniseries. Now, unlike the previous crossover events, Legends of Tomorrow is not involved in this particular crossover. And I gotta say, I would say I enjoyed the crossover. I'm not like as excited about it compared to some of the past crossovers we had, but I mean, in its own right, it was still a pretty enjoyable crossover. Now, going into it, like when I heard or read the announcement that they were going to do a episode where Barry and Oliver were going to switch lives, and then that would mean at the expense of switching bodies in the process, I was like, man, how's this going to play out? I mean, because it feels like such a 180 compared to last year's crossover with Crisis on Earth X, where, you would have these evil doppelgangers from another Earth invading Earth 1, and then they were basically infiltrating or interrupting Barry and Iris's wedding. And there was just all hell that was breaking loose. You had all these characters from their respective series all kind of get involved in this mess, and even the supporting characters also played an equally big part in this event from last year with Crisis on Earth X. And so there wasn't really that kind of feel that we got from that episode. And then you fast forward here to Elseworlds, it just feels like, night and day. And Elseworlds kind of feels very, lighthearted, and didn't really have that kind of like personal stakes being raised the way that Crisis on Earth X had. And even some of the moments that Earth X with Professor Stein sacrificing himself, and the whole characters of Legends of Tomorrow and The Flash, which that was the show that Professor Stein was first being introduced. So that scene and that particular moment grabbed me really hard as a viewer, and it was very heartbreaking just to see that character pass away, but in a way that his death wasn't in vain. But yeah, here at Elseworlds, I mean, it was a tolerable crossover, but like I said, there have been better crossovers in my opinion. Basically, what happens in Elseworlds is that you have this particular, not necessarily a villain per se, but we have the Monitor, who basically had been using this book to alter the course of history, and thus the book itself caused a switcheroo with Barry and Oliver, causing them to switch bodies and in turn switching each other's lives. And you also have some of their supporting characters from their respective TV shows, and they don't really realize the sun changed because they don't really notice any unusual happenstances going around. It's like they just knew that that's them the entire time. So Barry and Oliver both cross paths, and they both realize what's unusual, that something's terribly wrong. They basically switched each other's lives, and now they have to figure out like what's going on and who was responsible for all this. And so they go to Earth 38, which is the home of Kara from Supergirl. We also had the announcement that we were going to get a newer version of Lois Lane, or the Arrowverse version of Lois Lane was also made her debut in this particular crossover. We're likely going to see her on Supergirl every now and then. I think her actress, I mean, she didn't do a bad job. I think, I'm just kind of used to seeing Erica Durance's version of Lois back in Smallville. I mean, being on that show for as long as that show has been airing. So I've definitely really still trying to kind of get accustomed to the idea that it's being portrayed by a different actress. I know there have been a couple movies that Superman has had, so I can't really make a judgment on that since I have not seen any of the Superman movies in the DCU in recent years. But as far as like the television version of Lois is concerned, I'm definitely still trying to get accustomed to the idea of, Lois being portrayed by a different actress. So they've actually played the Smallville theme song as well, so that was actually a really nice touch, hearing that Remy Zero song. I mean, if anything, I mean, the DC TV shows or the entire Arrowverse, how have you, I mean, they normally do a pretty good job paying homage to some of these past works, so to speak. Yeah, I definitely really enjoyed that little Easter egg, or not much of an Easter egg. Getting back on subject, Barry and Oliver meet up with Kara. As the series goes along, we do also get the debut of Batwoman, and they actually were planning on making her own spin-off show that will be coming out next year. Going into the idea of Batwoman, I actually thought Ruby Rose did a pretty good job on that. Like, going into the announcement that she was going to be Batwoman, so I didn't really have a comment on that. I thought going into it that they may perhaps need to get someone like a certain actor or actress that had worked with previous DC TV shows or movies, how have you. And I thought going into it that maybe they could have perhaps cast Cassie Freeman as Batwoman or Kate Kane. Especially given the track record with a lot of the DC TV shows in recent years, recycling actors from previous TV shows, especially with what they've been doing with like Supergirl. Like they got like Dean Cain as Kara's father, Terry Hatcher to portray a villain in season 2. Same goes with Laura Vandervoort, who played the Supergirl in Smallville, so they brought her in as also another villain in the first season. And John Wesley Shipp from the original TV show The Flash, playing Barry Allen's father in the reboot. And speaking of John Wesley Shipp, we also have this confirmation that that not only there are other Earths out there in the multiverse, but we also have the revelation that Barry Allen from the original Flash 1990s series is actually connected to the Arrowverse. And I thought that was actually really cool. And he was sending out like a distress signal to Team Flash. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing him for next year's crossover, since he'll likely be in there. So basically, Elseworlds was kind of like playing the seeds for next year's crossover with the announcement, especially towards the end of the crossover, where there was a Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is a huge series in the comic books of DC, and especially something that they've been planning for years and years since they started premiering The Flash. And it seems like they're going to do this a little earlier because that event was supposed to take place in 2024. And for those that have been following The Flash, whether it's in the comics or whether you've been following the TV show, the Crisis on Infinite Earths involves the sudden disappearance of Barry Allen, or at least so we are being told. And that was something that had been mentioned in 2024. It feels like they're going to try and do this years earlier for next year, and there's also been a possible speculation that one of the main characters of the respective Arrowverse shows are going to get killed off, and whether it be Oliver, Barry, or Kara. So that's something that remains to be seen. There's likely some speculation that there's a good chance that Oliver is going to likely be the one to get killed off. If you watch that particular scene with him and the Monitor, there was like a little confrontation between those two. Basically, that scene alone kind of gives you kind of like a big of a hint that there's something up, that maybe that Oliver's making a deal with the Monitor, and the Monitor is just basically testing the heroes of the show with Oliver, Kara, Barry, and all that. There could be a possible chance that one of the 3 protagonists of their respective shows may get killed off in some way, or maybe they might make a sacrifice and alter the timeline to make it seem like Barry didn't sacrifice himself, or that he didn't die or disappear, or how have you, based on the unfortunate circumstances revolving around Barry's situation. So there's a good chance that Oliver might do something that'll basically alter the course of history, and possibly, I can't guarantee that he would get killed off as of the time I'm recording this audio, but there's a good chance that he may potentially get killed off for next year. Gosh, so it's definitely one of those very interesting scenarios to kind of look upon. We do get the evil doppelganger of Superman versus the regular Superman. It's not Bizarro Superman, but it's like, basically the traditional Superman that's dressed in this black suit. Just basically kind of like the evil doppelganger of Superman fighting against the regular Superman. So we do get a little fight scene between those two. By that point, Oliver and Barry managed to utilize the book and basically use the book that caused them to switch bodies in the first place. So now the spell has been undone, and so Barry and Oliver managed to restore their bodies back to normal, back to the way that they were prior. And so that's kind of really a summary of the Elseworlds crossover event. Still pretty watchable one. Not as spectacular compared to some of the other previous crossover. And not having Legends of Tomorrow did have some part in that. Batwoman was only there for that one particular episode. She was only like in the second part of the episode, but she didn't really stick around for very long. She was just kind of there in the second part to kind of be introduced as sort of like a backdoor pilot episode. So she didn't really stick around. I thought she might have like helped out the gang a little more. There was also pretty cool stuff that they did with John Wesley Shipp's Barry teaming up with the Arrowverse characters, so that was also pretty cool. Hopefully they'll do like maybe like a Barry Allen from the original Flash and the Grant Gustin Barry in the next year's crossover. So that would be something to look forward to. I mean, I know we sort of got that little fight scene there, but it was basically Oliver and Barry's body and Barry and Ollie's body. So hopefully they'll do a pretty cool moment for next year where we get to see like present day Barry and the Barry from the original Flash series to kind of team up together, and especially for Crisis on Infinite Earth. So that's something I'm also really looking forward to there. So I think that's really all I have to say for this video. Thank you all guys for watching, and let me know what your guys' thoughts are about the crossover events for those that have watched the Arrowverse shows, and what your guys' personal thoughts on the recent crossover event that we have. If there are any Supernatural fans out there that normally watch my videos or that happen to stumble upon it, I mean, what are your thoughts about Jeffrey Dean Morgan's return? And I mean, what particular moments would you like to see now that especially now that they got him to come back? Yeah, so let me know what your guys' thoughts are in the comment section below. And until next time, this is the GSTV reviewer signing out.